Well, Arani, thanks so much for jumping on. I'm so keen to dive into your story. I think that,
Thank you.
there's a lot of stuff that people are going to connect with. But I thought before we get into the money stuff, maybe we could start by just talking a little bit about your sort of like career, family journey to get to where you guys are now.
Yeah, totally. So I I like to think of it as very cookie cutter in terms of going to the private girls' school and getting the marks and going on to doing what I could at uni, and then went into investment banking at Macquarie many years ago. And I guess there really loved the journey of a transaction and how you actually win clients, not necessarily the actual financial structuring.
Yeah.
So I always say I like data, hate finance, which is ironic given I'm here.
Well, that's exactly why you're here,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And then, my husband Erik was also in investment banking, but he loved the finance, and he went. We kind of at this point diverged in our careers. So I went completely different. Well, not that different. I went into sales and sales operations at eBay, and Erik went into Wesfarmers, corporate development, kind of the next step that you would traditionally do out of investment banking. And then I, following eBay, and just really loved, again, revenue and driving sales, but always felt like I was executing with one hand tied behind my back, and ended up starting my own business. And at the same time, Erik was, corporate all the way.
Yeah.
So we've always had this nice little tension, I guess, between doing it the startup way or going the kind of long, like I guess your parents' way of staying in a corporate career for a long time.
Who's winning?
Different measures. I'd say I'm winning at life.
Yeah.
I'd say Eric's maybe winning slightly financially.
Well, Eric's obviously not here, so you can basically say whatever you want,
Exactly.
and then it's true once it's said
That's
on the podcast. It's
Exactly. But yeah, and then we've around when we kind of, we were both in investment banking, but I wouldn't say we had good financial practices. Like, I think as soon as you got paid a bonus, it would go straight out.
Yeah. Easy to do.
Yep. And then, and we weren't in a position to buy an apartment even after working with, two incomes. So we started saving a little bit more, bought our first apartment, which was just before COVID, and I'd like to think, a bit of a market dip.
Yeah, definitely.
That apartment got really, really used very well.
Yeah.
We, obviously were there during COVID and for 5 years.
Yeah.
And then now we've kind of reached that point where we had our daughter, 2-year-old Adia, and we wanted to find our patch of grass, just somewhere where she had like a little bit more than just kind of the concrete basement of our apartment building.
Yeah.
So
living in Sydney, that means you basically need to be ultra rich, right?
That's
if you
right.
want grass.
That's right. And I've seen a lot of different varieties of what grass means in Sydney, and it can literally be a 1 by kind of 3 metre square, rectangle. But we've managed to luckily find a good spot. I think we've had just good advice the whole way in doing this, and really, really happy now in our little patch of grass. I think we'll stay here for a little while.
Yeah, nice. Well, I'm keen to unpack that a little bit more, but before we get there, from it, just going back, like in terms of the journey, you mentioned that you bought an apartment, but what other things had you done from like a saving and investment perspective? Like how had you tackled, what you'd done until now?
Yeah, so I probably think the strangest thing we did was when we were 27, about to get married, because that's what you do. We decided to join our finances, and as part of that we thought, why don't we get a coach and a financial advisor to help us? And I think through that process, two things we identified were what our goals were, what our collective goals were, and one of them being we don't want to worry about money. and another one being we want to travel, like always be available to travel. But probably the key ones I remember.
Yeah.
But then there were a couple of other ones at 27. You know, did we want kids? Both of us were like, well, I don't know, not really. But again, that not sure meant that we set up investment bonds. And so today just kind of feels like it was this forced savings. It was just completely straight out of the bank account. Yeah. Never had to think about what are we going to do. And even when it came time to for me to start the business and we looked at me not having an income for a little bit, again, we knew that we had that as backup. Mm-hmm. So we just started spurting off those little pots of money, I guess. Yeah. Some of them accessible, some of them like harder. You have to log on to a computer to kind of and, you know, forgot my password many times before they actually help you along. Yeah. And so I think the investment bonds, the forced savings were the big ones. Obviously being like ex-finance, we always kind of try to rate ourselves at dabbling in the markets, but I think we've well and truly proven. I mean, Erik probably still thinks he's got some abilities there, but I definitely am well and truly out of investing in equities or things like that. For me, I think my biggest risk is my own business. So
lean all in, and the upside from that is more significant than you get on any sort of specky, right?
That's right. Right.
It's incredible that you got in, like you created and like set up these financial plans for yourself at 27, and it's almost, what age are you now?
38.
So, 10 years, particularly with the likes of an investment bond, it's come off the boil now. So you've just reaped the rewards of, I'm sure at the time it didn't feel, you weren't too sure. Even I recall you and I having conversations and you were like, I think that was a bad decision.
Exactly.
And then now it's like, that was an excellent decision.
It was such a good decision. I mean, like at the time, I remember thinking, why don't we just take him out and, get a better apartment or do anything but it was almost too hard from a tax implication, and it was just too hard to get them out after a while, so we just left them there. But now I look at that decision and, even if we didn't have kids, it would just be this safety net that we have.
Yeah, 100%. And then you've got 10 years of compounding behind you as well, which definitely helps. Okay, so you got a bit of advice, then sort of got a few things set up, ended up tracking along for a while, bought your apartment, and then we started working together around almost a year ago or thereabouts. Before, at that time, what were sort of the key sort of frustrations or the challenges for you guys that made you want to seek out some advice?
Yeah, it was, I think by that stage, I'd been running the business for about 6 years, and then Erik was just about to move to his new role in GYG, and for me, I just thought we were not maximising our personal circumstance. So I think I felt like every founder friend I knew had a family trust, and I, again, had no idea. Well, I had an idea, but then thought I could do it myself. Again, and then, of course, would never do it. Yeah. And it was, I think, and then we were kind of facing this thing of Erik now joining a company that was at the time pre-IPO. What do we do in relation to, what happens there? Yeah. So we suddenly found ourselves in this position where we don't know what we're doing. I think I keep coming back to, we think we felt like we should know. I mean, we technically both studied law. We technically both worked in finance. I mean, Erik is technically a CFO, but we just, when it came to this personal finance stuff, we were a bit kind of lost and felt like we weren't making our money work harder, especially for all the effort that you're putting in. Yeah. So that was kind of when Siobhan came knocking, and I was like, well, funny you should ask, because I think it was just right time for us, just absolutely. And I think since then it's been such an awesome blessing for us.
Yeah.
And it's just the start, so...
Yeah, 100%. I think it's really common. We were just chatting a little bit off air where people think, particularly people that are, working in senior roles, running businesses, executives, particularly Erik, like super senior in finance. And you sort of think, well, we get paid money every week or month into our bank account. Like, it should be easy to understand, but it's just like how specialized your work is, the stuff that you do every day. It's like money's its own thing like that. And so
exactly.
I don't know why it is that everyone beats themselves up about not knowing all the ins and outs of the tax rules, because non-CFOs beat themselves up about not knowing how to be a CFO, right?
Yeah, that's right.
I don't know how you would exactly describe, what your business does, but people that don't do that don't go, oh, I should be able to do that, like,
exactly,
because why would you, right?
Yeah.
And that ends up being a big barrier to people, I think, a lot of times, to actually going and to do something about it, because you know that you're smart, but you feel dumb. Don't want to ask the dumb questions that actually aren't that dumb, and so you do nothing.
Totally. What I'd love to know as well is that, having known you both for quite some time, you and Erik are, have really, really good open conversations about everything.
Yeah.
How has seeking financial advice shifted your relationship with money, as a unit?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question, because, I mean, I'm a big believer in reading about all sorts of things around your relationship and making them really work, like just really investing in them. And I think money, the first time around we sought financial advice, I was getting really frustrated with the weekly spend allocated to us, and just it drove. So that was a point, like, they'd been very helpful, but up until that point, that was the point that kind of it caused friction between Erik and I. And then I think this time around, what it's helped is just take pressure. So you I think we've got a young family. We're trying, both trying to, succeed in our careers. We've got also trying to be great parents, also trying to look after our own parents. And what happened, I think the conversation we had with Emily, it just was a lot. It just took that pressure off. For me, I kind of finally felt that I could disengage a little bit, like not in the not in the I don't know what's happening kind of way, but just could actually feel like I'm doing something about this. And now I've left it to the experts, and they'll help. Yeah.
What do you think was the biggest barrier for you guys in doing something about it yourself?
I mean, time is an obvious one, but I think, when you work every day, you're going into the same job, and then after work, you don't really want to sit down with your partner and talk about, let's set up a family trust, like, let's set up a bucket company. It just doesn't, I'd much rather watch TV than talk about that. And even any time Erik tried to kind of sit down, and I think he drew up a picture of a bucket company and debt recycling for me, which nice. I looked like I paid attention to.
Zoned out.
Yeah, that's right. I just needed those glasses where you just keep your eyes open. I think I do think it's that quality time you miss that you want to just be spending with your family. You just don't want to be talking about detailed financial structuring during that time. And so the great thing as well is we meet Emily during work hours as well. So it feels a little bit more serious and professional. And we both pay each other out because, Erik uses his work voice on the calls. But it makes it serious, but it feels like we're working on it without being overly burdensome.
Yeah. And what do you think the difference is? Because I'm sure that you get the same sorts of pitches from us, right? Talking about debt recycling or tax structuring or whatever. What makes it different to when you're doing it with Erik?
I think it's just that whole concept of having another coach. So you can get a coach if you want to start running or that sort of thing. I mean, it's a pretty kind of standard way of talking about things. But for me personally, I've got my team, which includes, my psychologist, my GP, but also the girls who do my blow dry on a weekly basis, which was included in our budget. Things like that are just non-negotiable. And for us, I think it was the same thing, assembling this team to support our family and our career goals as well. And so I think Emily and then the guys at Rose Partners as well, which I've now brought in for the business, it's just kind of let's swarm ourselves a little bit with support rather than try and muscle through this alone.
Yeah.
That's kind of, I think, the key difference. It's one less thing to be doing by yourself.
Yeah. And also I think that when the decisions are bigger as well, it's sort of hard, even if you've got an idea or you can do all the research online, but if you're making $100,000 decisions or $1 million decisions or multi-million dollar decisions, it doesn't matter how good your pitches are, it's going to be hard to go, well, I haven't actually validated this with someone else.
Exactly. And someone who's kind of invested in your success, but not they can be objective about it. I think that's really key to it all.
100%. And so we've done a bunch of things together, or, you guys have done a bunch of things through the process. What are the top sort of 2 or 3 things that you feel have had the biggest impact for you guys?
Yeah, I think the budget, I've forgotten the name of the actual tool.
Savings planner.
Savings planner.
We don't like the B word.
Oh, yeah.
It's a forecast.
Budget. Yeah, the forecast. Sorry. That, Erik and I love spreadsheets, and that is a very good tool. We had a lot of fun filling that out and also appreciating all the formulas. Now I'm nerding out on Excel tips, but I think that was a really simple tool to kind of show really clearly what we could be saving or what we should be saving, and then go to our bank account and go, actually, that's right there. I think the kind of then the environment, so the just having all your accounts connecting into one, because we've probably extended into a few now. I think our home loan now is with a bank that has a very poor experience, which I am struggling with, but that's all right.
You've got cheap rates at least.
Cheap rates, but evidently I need to go into the bank to log on to the app, but that's all right. And then I think with it, I think it's that team of, it's Emily and Roland is out on our team, and I kind of just feel like we can fire off something at them and you've got the support of 2 people, rather than waiting for 3 weeks to get a reply from your financial advisor. You feel like it's actually being read and kind of acknowledged, and then then you kind of, it's off your plate, now it's onto Pivot's plate. You come back to me when you can. So I think I didn't go into specific tools. I again don't know about debt recycling. The other one is the obviously introductions into Rose, the accounting guys. We were struggling with that whole family trust thing for a long time. We had one conversation with Cynthia, and she just really was amazing. Well, she actually just talked to Erik initially, and then Erik was like, I think you need to talk to her about your business as well. And I had this conversation, and she was very direct with me, but it was great. And so we've brought her on board as our, for my business accounting as well. And again, it's that same, you want your village of supporters kind of all pushing you to do the right not the right thing, but do the best.
Yeah. Did Cynthia tell you about how she taxed it up to Louis Vuitton handbags in
No.
that conversation? Maybe that's one for another day, but this is why you need a good dream
Designer
team
goods
around you.
I will be hitting her up.
It's interesting though, like you comment about the savings planner spreadsheet, and that's something that we hear a lot from our clients as well. And I love the spreadsheet as well. I'm a big fan of spreadsheets, but it amazes me that people that you've got, like quite very strong incomes, you've got savings, you've got investments, you're buying Sydney properties, which aren't cheap.
Yep.
And then you go, well, what's made the biggest difference? And people go, having a good budget.
Yes.
Like
No, but it's knowledge, right? Because I think without something like that, subscriptions go out the door all the time, and and it's not like cancelling your Stan subscription will make a big difference to event like buying in Sydney property, but I think it's that knowledge of you are making the call rather than just having money freely going out of what your hard-earned money.
Yeah, and it's easy it's maybe one thing on its own doesn't make a difference, but half a dozen or a dozen of those things does. And when you've got, different accounts and credit cards and everything set up and all over the place, it's really hard to keep a track of those things. And so spreadsheets one part, but then having the right bank accounts for the right sorts of spending, it does make it easier for you to check in on those things, and you've got a feedback loop, like the budget is a plan, a savings planner is the plan, but then the system is what gives you the results and gives you that feedback loop as well.
That's exactly right. I think the like our spending account, we can kind of log in there and immediately know where that should be, if it's healthy or not. Like it's kind of all based on that savings planner, but you can immediately get a feel for it without actually diving into the numbers.
And having to worry too much about what you're actually spending on. It's just like, as long as you're hitting your number,
exactly,
it doesn't
exactly
matter. And so what's the difference? Because you mentioned that the weekly budget was an issue for you guys a decade ago when you went down that path.
Yeah.
But now it sounds like it's actually a positive thing. So what's shifted there, do you think?
Yeah, I think I guess when you're 27, you don't necessarily. I think it's just really hard to see money coming in, and then you go rent, and then everything else until I can, or maybe a little like extra on your holiday or something like that. Whereas I think today, I don't think Erik or I really crave like wealth. We just crave like just this not worry about money.
Yeah.
And I think that has been enabled by the savings planner, and just having that kind of weekly number that comes into the joint spending, but we know that our actual hard-earned money is going somewhere else and being like just through automated direct debits, but like it is working in other ways.
Yeah.
And then you realise like that's actually quite enough to live. We don't have those kind of arguments about that not being enough. Or I think back in the day, Erik wanted to do $250 a week for himself. But I was really struggling at $500 and things like that, and it caused a lot of friction. So now it's just one
number.
Right?
You guys can debate on who gets what. But it's also, I think, that you're at the end of the day, like it's your plan. You've got so much money coming in, and then you can choose what you do with it. And that spreadsheet tool, I think, is a good way to go, well, if we spend at this level, then this is how much we'll have left over. And then obviously the planning, scenario analysis says, well, is that enough to get what you want? And if it is, then great. If it's not, then you go, okay, well, what am I going to shift? Is there a way that I can cut down bills? Is there a way that I can deal with less spending? Or is it like a debt or a lifestyle travel thing that,
Exactly.
you want to flex on and you ultimately prioritize? But it's not about restricting. It's just about knowing how much have you chosen to spend, and, what's going to be left over.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, coming back to that whole just feeling safe and, even like now we're kind of entering that moment where your parents, you might need to confront conversations about you looking after your parents and things like that, and which we both very early on decided that we want to be at least in a position to do, not necessarily like what like our parents demand it at all. And I think it's actually nice to be in this position because I was telling you beforehand, you know, my dad had an accident early this year and really kind of has changed what's happening in our family. And I think it's nice and comfortable to feel like, okay, we know exactly how that they can continue their lifestyle. We aren't, we can kind of support them without them really feeling like they're a burden on us as well, things like that.
And one of the things that you mentioned there was around like responsiveness and knowing that you can get your questions answered as they come up.
Yeah.
Over the last little while, you've made some shifts, buying property, structuring business, those sorts of things. What role did that play as you moved through that decision-making process?
Yeah, so I think it was, I would say around, so we started with Emily and Roland early last year. If you'd told me we would have been buying a property like with a patch of grass by the end of the year, I would have said absolutely no. Like I just felt that we were not there. Again, getting through savings planner conversations, getting control of what was happening, I think gave more than, I'm generally the riskier one, but it gave Erik, who's the conservative one, a little bit more understanding of, hey, we could actually do this, especially if we do X, Y, Z. So I think at the time, probably by September of last year or October even, we'd told Emily and Roland, yeah, we're like, I think we're getting ready, maybe about mid-2025, early 2025. And then I think the next email to them was like, so we've found a place and we've put a bid in and we're organising. So it was that ability to just suddenly accelerate, especially when we needed to. We found the place that we loved. It all happened very quickly. But up until that point, I think for Erik particularly, for me, I was probably a little bit more, yeah, we'll just wait. But Erik had that confidence that, no, we can do it. It won't affect our lifestyle. This will be our repayment, and this is how our weekly, like our savings planner changes.
Yeah.
He was right in that spreadsheet, kind of making moves and seeing what happened. And I think it was very helpful because for me, I just didn't want to change lifestyle too much.
Yeah.
And so he keeps going to me now, we just have to stick to the budget, the planner. And the thing is, I'm not changing behaviour at the moment to stick to the planner. There are
platinum dipped cowboy hats.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, a really good example again. Erik is South African. A barbecue is basically the ultimate South African man thing you can do. And this whole time we've never had a patch of grass, and never had an outside, so barbecuing was just impossible. And then obviously it was his birthday. I was like, why don't you get a barbecue? We go into barbecues galore, whatever, and he's looking at those smaller ones that are a bit more quaint. And then at that point I was like, oh, like Erik, like we do have, we've got money still here, and then you could just see his eyes just went bing. and he just stopped talking. Suddenly we just, bought a much bigger barbecue.
The Rolls Royce of barbecues, cooks for you, does everything.
Well, exactly.
That's an investment.
Yeah, that's an investment. But I think, it's just one of those purchases that we made because we knew we had stuck to certain things. And then, yes, it was out of sync. Maybe we didn't plan for it as, with Emily and Roland, but it was one of those things that we went, actually, there is money and it comes out of here and it actually doesn't affect any of our other strategies.
Yeah, nice.
Amazing.
Nice. And so we've talked a bit about the journey, and you mentioned a couple of things there already, but talking about like the results, what have been some of the tangible outcomes? Obviously you've got a great barbecue.
Yeah, great barbecue. I think the biggest result is being able to purchase this place in Randwick most recently. We did that kind of with the guys, and we did, again, assemble a team. So we had buyer's agent, mortgage broker and lawyers and Emily and Roland as well. So there was kind of this swarm effort. Again, we do that because we're not the experts. We want to bring people in to just take that pressure off. So that, I think, has been a massive win because we did it.
Huge.
We did it probably 8 months earlier. And if I look at, like, if I just literally, it sounds cliche, but if I look at Adia running up and down that hallway, which she couldn't do before, she just is like living her best life, just outdoors all the time, running around the side of the place. So just that alone has been amazing. And sure, maybe we would have got there at the end of this year if we'd just done it by ourselves. But I just, it's been this extra special few months where we've gotten a place that we really love. We don't feel stressed, and we can go buy a barbecue.
That's amazing.
And who knows, like with the rate cuts, like we've just seen one RBA cut. There's some, I was seeing that Commonwealth Bank and one of the other majors, I think maybe Westpac, have predicted 3 more this year. It's like, if that happens, we could see a bit of a kick in property prices, and then all of a sudden you're either paying a bunch more or borrowing a bunch more.
That's right.
Or potentially starting to get a bit nervous because maybe it's not quite fitting as well as what it did when you planned for it, in 2024.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and I think when we, because we sold the apartment to then, and had already purchased the house, and there was a bit of, like, we were talking back and forth because we'd bought really at a low point in the market originally, and now we were buying basically at the top because we bought at the end of last year. And I think we also sold in a very difficult time, November, December at the end of the year. And I think, so all of those kind of decisions were weighing on us. But then again, we could see the writing on the wall around rate cuts, around, like it felt a little bit like we might be overcommitting. But again, go back to the spreadsheet. And then also this prediction of like this is now upside because we haven't stressed ourselves out, and if rate cuts keep coming, we're in an even better position. We can upgrade the barbecue, maybe get something else that Arani wants.
Tax deductible Louis Vuitton.
Yeah, exactly.
And so you touch on stress there and less stress, and that's amazing to hear. What do you feel have been some of the mindset shifts for you guys after now being where you are, supported with advice versus where you were before?
I think the big one is just that clarity, and almost like that part of our lives we literally do not need to worry about. Like, if I can compare to my parents or Erik's parents, they worked really hard, got super, and they've got their house, and that's basically it. Whereas I feel for us, we've like taken what they had and then just really, really elevated that. So I think it's just that mind shift of not having to think about it is the big one, because I assure you, without the advice and the village of people helping us, we would be kind of still saying that we'd set up a trust 5 years from now. Like, honestly, I think I
think that's the hardest thing, particularly when you're both busy, you run your own business, Erik's in a high pressure job. getting home at the end of the day and then firing up the laptop again.
Yes.
And then having to hear your partner talk about something that you're not really sure about. Then you're
That's
just
right.
like, really? Do you really know what you're talking about?
Yeah. When he like kind of asks you to bring up the credit card statement or something and then you start, he's like, oh, I'm surprised it got to that number. And I'm like, well, there's the barbecue and then there's a washing machine. No. And there's a few other purchases sporadically.
One of the things that you touch on there, like, not having to think about it so much. And for me, I find that the less, like, we've all got all this cognitive load around all the different things, in the back of our mind or competing for our attention. Have you noticed, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but have you noticed anything when it comes to like your work or your time from not having, like, knowing that stuff is sorted?
Yeah, like I think in my business I do a lot of the finance, so it's meant that from a personal finance perspective, I really struggle to engage because I've got the load of the business and paying people and the stress of, literally making sure that I've got these 10 babies who are always fed every single month. And for me, that was always like quite a burden. And so when it came to personal finance and even adapting with me kind of running my own business and not having a salary, like it just meant from a personal finance perspective, like you say, that cognitive load, that like pressure you might have that actually I should quit running my own business because I could make more money, X, Y, Z. Like it just kind of, you feel that I don't have that pressure at all. Like I know that I can just focus on the business and build it because I know that I'm making enough to contribute to our household. I'm also making enough to really like meaningfully set up like our daughter, and that's all I need to really care about.
Yeah.
Like basically making sure that the business pays me enough and pays our team enough and survives and keeps thriving. And I don't need to be too concerned that, there's going to be a massive tax bill or there's going to be something that really impacts over personally that then changes things in the business.
Yeah, I love that. And before people go into the get financial advice, they often don't know like how it's going to work and what to expect. What surprised you guys the most about the process?
I think it was, what surprised us was how kind of clear and set out it was. So it was like each meeting had its own purpose that we were going to focus on. And when we first chatted to Siobhan, she stepped it all out. And then I was like, oh, cool. But then these invites came up in our diary when specifically spelled out, you're going to be talking just about this. And it got to a point where even Erik was like, oh, no, we're not going to talk about that this session. That'll be next session. Let's just, because I'd be like, why haven't we set up Macquarie accounts, that sort of thing? But he was like, no, that's for next session. We need to do that. He was like, I think he particularly was extremely clear on what was to be expected. And it's almost like those sessions now, because we're very much in that not maintenance stage, but like progress. Yeah, exactly. So we're very much we have our check-ins, we have discussion about what comes next, but I think that initial setup, it was really well set out for us. I think it was made really clear to us that there was a bit of work for us to do as well. So, you could feel like you could schedule the homework in.
I wish we could do all of the work, but unfortunately it's like you've got to do a little bit.
To be honest, it wasn't like, it was actually very easy. The hardest thing, which I think Tim told us, was getting the wet signature for the super role.
Yeah, nightmare.
Just finding a printer.
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
It's so archaic, but, that's finance, I suppose.
Yeah. No, I mean, it makes sense it makes sense.
They're just holding on to their customers is what it is. That they're resistant. The easier that they make it for people to get this information, then the easier it is for them to leave, which is not right. But anyway, that is what it is.
That's super. We could have a long conversation.
Exactly. That's another podcast. And so, because you guys had got financial advice like a decade ago, what was different this time around?
So I think at that time we were, newly married, fresh little babies, and we did that whole, what are your values? What are your goals? And whereas I think this time around we've got a child, our careers are in the spot that we need them to be. So it was really clear what we wanted. So this time around it was very much, well, we do want to buy a place, and we do want to make kind of our whole situation of me working for myself and Erik working at GYG, just like how do we make that run better? Because we know that we're not set up optimally, but we just don't know how to get there. So I think we were a little bit more financially literate, and had also been with friends who are obviously growing up around us doing the same things, and we knew what we should be doing, but there was just this gap to get there. And we had a few false starts of trying to do it ourselves. We tried to set up the trust ourselves, and which again ended with us not actually declaring it because we both got busy, and we still pay for a company that exactly that just exists in the ether.
We can find a use for that at some point. I'm sure.
Don't worry, I think it's on Emily and Cynthia's list.
And so you've mentioned a few things already, but what do you think are the biggest benefits that Emily and Roland have brought to you guys through the process?
So I think, I still remember when Roland put up the model, like the forecast.
Yeah.
And it would have been maybe session 3 or 4, really. So it was really early on, and I think it was that reality that, is that kind of all in terms of like where we're at? I think it was just having the numbers reflected, not just back at you in this is what you're worth or this is your statement of advice. It was kind of that chart was the first one. And then the second one was Emily took us through the statement of advice, and from a consulting perspective, I'd done a bit of work in the space, and I know these documents go on forever, and we were on the Zoom and I saw how long it was going to be, and I was just like, oh no, this is going to... But I think, I don't know what it was, she just really made it kind of easy to understand, and by the end I felt like I had read the statement of advice, which I think is pretty rare on a document that long these days.
Not according to ASIC though. But.
I definitely no. The thing is, it's so easy with something like that to do something boilerplate but it was a document that actually felt like ours, that had been tailored very much for our specific circumstances. And as she took us through it, again, thought this would take forever, but it was a very engaging discussion. We asked questions, we could kind of circle back, it was just one of those sessions that you go, I expected this to be super painful, and it actually was painless, and now I'm on this road to actually doing better for my own family.
Love that.
Yeah,
that's great. How would you describe Emily to your friends?
An enigma. She, I think she's just so I think the most that I always like to chat and like really extract information out of people, but I feel like she's always more interested in us. Yeah. So I think the most I've extracted from her is that she went to Vanuatu. But then it eventually turned back to a financial conversation because she was like, yeah, you can go for like $400 return. And I was like, no, take me back to my... yeah, I mean, like she just, I think, is invested. She comes to every conversation, both she and Roland. Like they're always super... they know what's going on. They ask the questions they ask. I'm often like, not often, but I'm sometimes like, oh, I'm actually not sure of that, let me log in and check. So it's, I think, just that very tailored, you don't expect someone who kind of might have a whole book of clients to just know you that personally, but she does.
And what about Roland? How would you describe him to your friends?
How would I describe him? Like someone you could put any amount of data into and it like spits out very quickly an output. Yeah.
Well, sort of like that kid that's kicking around on the internet at the moment with the mental arithmetic.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Like out of control. That's pretty much
that is Roland.
That's what I think he's like. I think, and he knows, like he knows so much detail. I mean, like I know Emily does, but he knows so much detail about stuff that, like our personal finance, that I had no idea about, especially with respect to Erik's kind of setup and salary and shares and things like that. They'd be having this conversation because he's like read in thorough the employment contract and like he's just gone that extra level of detail. Yeah. So that's how I'd describe it.
This is why Siobhan calls him triple threat Roland, because he's got a tax background, a mortgage broking background, and an advice background as well.
He's unbelievable.
Yeah.
What would your advice be to someone that's thinking about getting financial advice and sort of sitting on the fence?
Just book in the session and just try. Just try. Like you could end up saying this is not for you. I think it's unlikely because I think the majority of people probably are a little bit just not being optimised, a little bit, like I guess I keep saying the word illiterate, financially illiterate, but I think it's not taught in schools. It's not taught at any point in your education. So you are not the best person to be doing this yourself. Like get someone to just even bounce ideas off.
And for people that are in that position, sort of on the fence, the big question is like, are the fees worth it? In your mind, what makes those fees worth paying?
I think like what makes all the fees, I mean, first of all, you basically make the fees back within the, I think we will have within the year, especially, and then once we set up our actual structure, it'll be just kind of paying itself off is what we've worked out. It's. I think like if I think about, I think I said it before when we were buying a place, we had a buyer's agent, had you guys, had the mortgage broker, had the lawyers, and everybody, yes, is taking a clip of this transaction, but I think you've also got to flip it on the other way of if you didn't have any of those people and you weren't paying for a service, what would you realistically save? And again, when we do those numbers and we kind of work that out, it tends to be that we would do a lot worse, and we'd be be standing out by themselves. We actually end up making money by getting experts in to help us through these big life decisions.
Well, all of those people, like you say, that they are taking clip, but they're all adding value to what you're doing as well, and then it ends up being more on the other side.
Oh, no, absolutely. And it's very, I mean, like I run a consulting business, so I know what it's like on the other side where clients go, well, we don't want to outsource this to someone, but the thing is on the other side we will do it really quickly, and that's the same with getting on the personal side. Like you get really good advice in and you end up making much more money for bringing it in than for not having it.
100%.
I think that's where people can get stuck often on, like, the cost,
Yeah.
but then if you weigh out what's the real cost, if you were to say wait, and you were like, we could have gotten there by mid 2025, end of 2025. Let's say you bake in 3 rate cuts, and what do they say? The house prices get pushed up 6%.
1,000,000%, I'd say.
6%.
Yeah. I think that's
So it's like, what would that be at the end of the year? What's the cost of your property then? And then if you look at the cost of all of those, your dream team, actually it was a bargain. It was bargain basement prices.
That's exactly right. And I think it's really, I mean, any decision you make in life, it's always like, in hindsight, it was the right decision for you. But I think this is one of those ones where, like, financially, you are better off bringing in, like, paying for advice, especially for us on the financial advice front, because it just changed our life. Like, it took a decision that was probably 2 years off to now, that happened within 3 months.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Real.
My last question for you is, what are you guys most excited about looking forward?
What are we excited about? Well, we're very much in that moment of should we do a renovation on the bathroom? I have long decided I'm not a renovation person. But I think, if anything, where the next horizon is really like making sure holidays and family time really happen. So we've got plans of a Europe trip and a South Africa trip at the end of the year. Things like that. So, I mean, like, doing 2 overseas holidays in a year is probably, it's challenging, but I think we really want to be those people.
Yeah, nice.
Nice.
I thought you were going to say staycation, pitch a tent on your patch of grass and just barbecue for the whole week.
I think if
Well.
Erik
Maybe
was
run
here,
that past Emily.
yeah, she would like that, I think.
100%. Arani, thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank
Super
you.
excited for what you got coming up.
Thank you
Thanks,
so
Arani.
much, guys.
Cheers.
Cheers, guys.
Bye for now.